largest oil refinery in Saudi Arabia is hit by operations. And in Qatar, they have shut down liquefied natural gas production after it says it was targeted. Faisal Islam has been looking closely at how supplies are being affected by the hostilities and the possible impact on the price of energy. You can read more on what Faisal says on the BBC website, but I'm going to say I've got Sally in the studio with me. So Sally, really difficult times, and this is a really important bit of fallout what's happened in the conflict with that Strait of Hormuz being such a crucial waterway in terms of global oil.
Absolutely, but not just oil, but it's gas as well. So for Qatar, for example, all of this liquefied natural gas that's exported goes through this skinny bit of waters, and Iran, of course, is right on the edge of all of that for some distance and some of its border. If we look at the price of energy now trading on global markets, we've got Brent crude, a barrel of that now up nearly 5% just today, now trading above $81 at around 46 cents a barrel. The price of natural gas as well up nearly 6% so far today. Now for Qatar, a lot of this LNG, the liquefied natural gas, heads to Europe. Europe pivoted away from Russia when Russia invaded Ukraine and looked to Qatar to fill some of that void. So we're seeing a huge impact today from European markets. Share markets, we're seeing most of the main stock markets in Europe trading significantly lower already this morning. So the FTSE 100 down over 2%. The markets in Germany down over 3%. In Italy and Spain, even steeper falls, and France down over 2%. But also we're seeing the euro, the currency, the pound sterling weaker as well. And we're seeing the same effect in Asia with the Asian financial markets really hit stock markets and also the Japanese yen closing. And that's interesting because Asia gets most of the oil that heads out of that strait goes to the key markets in Asia and South Korea and China.
And Sally, I guess the question a lot of our viewers will have is if, as this conflict continues on, what can that mean then? I mean, can it affect people far and wide?
Absolutely, and we probably will remember what that means, because if you remember when Russia invaded Ukraine, that was full-scale invasion 4 years ago, we saw a very similar impact. We saw a spike in the price of gas and the price of oil on financial markets and global markets, and that meant here for us, our energy bills went up. I mean, that was literally the knee-jerk reaction that we saw. It meant interest rates had to go up because they had to try and counter the inflationary impact on the higher energy costs. Just to say that here in the UK, we may not see that impact initially, because last week we saw the cap on domestic energy bills stuck at a certain level that's not sustainable. So all domestic bills in the UK are capped on that period of time. That will counter the inflationary impact for short-term energy use. It's really interesting actually to explain why that is in the studio. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, says that UK military bases in Cyprus will not be used in Iran. On Sunday, he said he had agreed to an American request to use British bases for, I quote, a specific limited defensive purpose. But on Monday, he also told British intelligence will not include any in Cyprus. Well, this comes as Iranian-led drones hit the UK's Aquateria Air Base in south of Cyprus on Sunday. One drone hit the runway, but there were no and let's go live to our correspondent Jessica Carter, who is in Cyprus for us. So, Jess, just tell us what the aftermath is of those attacks in the last 24 hours. Well, we had as you mentioned, the drone strike on the base here, RAF Aquateria, and yesterday the Pacific authorities said that 2 further drones had been intercepted. So they've been holding National Security Council's use and spent some resources, frigates, F-16s, or sending them to the area. There are requests for other assistance from EU member states, reportedly. And that's as Cyprus is very keen to point out the threat that it has no part in this wider conflict following the strike.
on Iran, but nevertheless, the ripple effect is affecting the Mediterranean island. An EU country that near the Middle East, not far from Turkey, for example, and the reason is that the British bases here on the island are legacy when it was a British colony. So the Laureate Actor theory, which is trying to sort of mount a base for operations in the Middle East. UK Keir Starmer has said not to use I have to say the British government are annoyed that clarification didn't come earlier. In Cyprus live for us there. Thank you very much for the moment. Well, that's it for this half hour. But don't go away. We'll get an extended interview with international editor Jeremy Bowen just after the break. So do get in touch with any questions you have for him as well. I'm Regina Garvin on this BBC News. So stay with us.
Hello there. An area of low pressure will be impacting the far west of Africa, which will get yet more showers on Morocco today. The storm Julia is going to bring some windy conditions with it as well. Ahead of it, though, that southerly wind will impact the one series of Syria. This is the story then with Casablanca. We will see a good dip of but showery weather. Now let's take a look at what to expect across the Middle East over the next few days. We've got some showers of rain and snow. Georgia, we've got a very weak weather. Into the far west of Iran. Now, as that moves through, those temperatures will fall away for a time. So there'll be more showers.
Ó ti yẹ ọlá pé ọmọ mẹ́rin mo wá ní ẹ̀rọ pé ọlá pé mo gbàgbé mi tó wọ́n ara lẹ̀ sílẹ̀ fún yín mo lẹ̀ sílẹ̀ fún yín ara lẹ́tà lẹ́ni lẹ́tà.
GSM with Uganda is an organization that works with young people in areas majorly of entrepreneurship, financial literacy, and work readiness.
Gives them the ability and confidence.
I've observed a lot of confidence boosts within the students in engaging in a lot of activities such as pitching.
You have to face the judges and speak to them, and then you have to be able to communicate effectively.
Being able to preach in a congregation, change the way I look at myself and how I can do this. So we looked at it. And that is exactly our mission. Skills that unites within thriving communities. Absence involvement has been very impactful. It allows us now to do much more to run the program more successfully.
ìpín àwọn àgbà fún wọn àgbà fún wọn ìwé wáìnì náà pé ẹ̀sùn sáré ẹni àṣàlẹ̀ ní bí má ṣàmúlò
This is BBC News, the latest headline of the day. Intensifies Israel launches a new wave of simultaneous strikes in Tehran and Beirut and says it's going to send ground troops in to Lebanon. The US and Israel say they've destroyed Iran's unconventional Gaza command and facilities. Iran continues to retaliate through US in Saudi Arabia. The American base in Bahrain's caught fire. Explosions around Qatar, Iran, the United Arab Emirates, the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio warns the US will intensify its attacks on Iran.
The hardest hits are yet to come from the U.S. military. The next phase will be even more punishing on Iran than it is right now.
Germany and France will Greece to send military support to Cyprus on the British Air Base there, paying under threat. And many people remain stranded in the Gulf. Limited flights resume from Dubai and Abu Dhabi, but tens of thousands of passengers are still unable to leave as much of the airspace remains closed. Hello, I'm Regina writing on. Let's continue our coverage of the escalating war in the Middle East. This morning, Israel launched fresh strikes on Iran and on Lebanon's capital Beirut. The US is rapidly reducing the numbers of its diplomatic staff in the Gulf. Washington's closed its embassies in Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, warning citizens in more than a dozen nations in the region to leave as soon as possible. The economic consequences of the conflict are already rippling far beyond the battlefield. Iranian strikes have been reported in Saudi Arabia, where officials say the fire at the oil refinery is under control and at a major gas processing plant in Qatar. Those facilities have halted production, which could disrupt global energy supply. Gas prices surged sharply as a consequence of one point rising as much as 42% in Meanwhile, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, says it's monitoring energy prices and increased financial market volatility, but stress that it's too early to assess the economic impact of the war. Well, let's take a step back and look at the events of the last 3 days or so by joining our international editor, Jeremy. Jeremy, it's been quite a few days, and the war is ending. Let's begin by just getting your take on where you think things stand at the moment as they continue to escalate.
Was spreading, deepening. The levels of future danger are quite clear. The consequences of this are going to go on long after. And I think that what's emerging at the moment, which is actually concerning for those people who are worried about the spread of the war in the region, which is anybody's sound mind. There's some confusion about where it's going in terms of what the war aims are. Because, I mean, to start with, Donald Trump made it clear that what he wanted to do was to get rid of the regime and allow the Iranian people the opportunity to take over. He seems now to be somewhat veering away from that after the Secretary of State has said that America got into this because Israel was going to attack Iran and they had to attack as well to protect their own people. It seems like a quite convoluted intelligence community in the US to state that case. The suggestion that they were about to unveil a nuclear weapon, there's no evidence whatever for that. That also happens. They weren't able to do it. So, as things have developed as well, there have been other questions about exactly where it's going. You know, why does this happen? Means that people, if countries go into wars and they don't quite know where they want to get in terms of war aid. That's a recipe for mission creep, for extending it, and also it makes it hard to know where to stop.
Indeed. Let's talk about Iran now. There's another question a lot of people are asking. What is Iran's strategy when it is hitting back? Because a lot of countries across the Persian Gulf have been drawn in. Now we're reporting on attacks on Dubai and Qatar, and there are a lot of people that wonder what the strategy is, if there is a coherent strategy at all.
Yeah, there is a strategy. I do think it's, I mean, the man who appears to be the most influential man is a man called Larijani, who's been at the top of Iranian affairs off and on for many, many years. I mean, I remember him being a fairly prominent diplomat when I was a young foreign correspondent getting on for 40 years ago. So, as a connect, I had some contacts with him when he was doing some negotiations in Geneva in the mid-80s. So he's been around an awfully long time. And they are deep thinkers, and they will be thinking about what to do. And their strategy seems to be by not just attacking American targets, bases that they have, and not just attacking Israel, attacking Saudi Arabia, UAE, Oman were actually directly meaning trying to stop this war from happening. I think that because they are, first of all, they're talking about eventually the killing of their supreme leader, but as well as that, they'll be well aware that they're up against the massively superior military power in the United States and also Israel. So I think that by broadening it in this way, they're trying to disrupt it, trying to increase the complexity of the war. And perhaps they are trying to get the Gulf countries to go to the Americans and say, look, this is killing us, this is killing getting some of our people. The regime can get to the other end of this and still be there, then they will take that very much as a win.
That's it. Me, I'm enjoying it too. Hey, yeah.
Against them or looking on. They seem to be pushing those Arab Gulf states particularly deeper into the American scope, very detached from the Iranian, I would say, as being a rather reckless and counterproductive move. But, the volume of media coverage and the speed of events on the ground mean that this has been a very intense relate, but it's only 4 days. Wars last much longer than that, so it's still very much the beginning.
Indeed, and this comes on to another question that we've been hearing quite a lot, which is how many missiles, how much military arsenal does Iran have left? How many Navy ships has also been as a question, and I'll come on to the US and Israel and some of their capabilities. But what is your assessment?
The biggest was very short range, accurate ballistic missiles, and these are ones they've been sending towards Gulf countries, long range ones which they've launched. Israelis as well, and of course we don't know precisely exactly what they have in their locker. We don't know whether the Americans or the Israelis have actually found out where they keep these things and managed to blow some of them up. Iran is a very big country. One of the things that they're facing is not just the volume of missiles that they have, but also the number of launches. You need to fire them. So the Americans are particularly targeting it in this video blowing up these launches. So there are question marks about how much of that is left. And we think the equation is as follows, that while there are clearly limits on what Iran's got in the lockdown, there are also limits on the number of interceptors that the Israelis, the Americans, and the Gulf countries have. These interceptors that they're firing off in great numbers are incredibly expensive and quite slow to produce. And over the last year or two, a lot of them have been used as stocks and not what they might be. And Donald Trump put out a message saying, we have unlimited supplies, virtually unlimited supplies. Well, maybe they do, but I certainly, what I was hearing during the first sort of rash of attacks between Iran and Israel during the Gaza war, starting a year into it, I was hearing from senior Western diplomatic sources that had those exchanges gone on for much longer, then in terms of what the Americans had available in the region, in their ships, and what the Israelis had, that the cupboard was increasingly bare. They only had a few more days left. Now, the Americans had a lot of time to build up to this number, to carry it back, so they will have a lot. They will put a lot of stuff in. But they're only just what they bring. And I think the Iranians are challenged with it. So that they try to get the Israelis to burn through as much of their supplies as possible.
That's really interesting to hear that from you, Jeremy. Jeremy, we're going to take a short break, but of course you will be with us after that. So Jeremy will be back. Run along with This is BBC News World. Let's return to the conversation we've been having, an extended chat with international editor Jeremy Bowen. Jeremy, the question is hard to answer, but I know there are different theories. How does eventually written out on the BBC website explores that a little bit, so I wanted to ask you about that on there as well.
Well, I haven't actually, because contradicting signals are coming out. It's the way it was 24 hours ago. I mean, things have changed, and that is quite what we come to expect from the Trump administration. Where does it end? Well, at a certain point, I suppose the Americans and the Israelis are going to say, "Oh, mission accomplished." Freighted words, given the history of that phrase, very famous at the invasion of Iraq in 2003, when infamously, President George Bush landed on an aircraft carrier and in front of a massive banner saying mission accomplished, when there were years of fighting, war and disaster ahead. But at a certain point, they might say that, and they will say that we've done what we came to do, that we've destroyed their military capacity, that they no longer can be a threat. But does that mean that they will say, okay, we're going to stop and the Islamic Republic is still going to be intact, that the regime is still going to be there? It's a hard, I think they're probably realizing that trying to unseat them by is difficult, it's probably absolutely impossible. There is no precedent for getting regime change through simply alone. If you look back to the other events in the last 20 odd years or so, more than that, when these things have happened. 2003, the Americans led a coalition into Iraq to get rid of Saddam Hussein, and they did that, but they did that with a huge air campaign and a massive ground operation. In 2011, Colonel Gaddafi of Libya was unseated, and he was unseated because he came under very heavy following from NATO and various Gulf countries as well, and then rebels who had been equipped and to quite a degree trained as well by foreign countries, particularly like Qatar, were able to rise up and unseat him. But then, that's not the end of it. The reason why taking on these enterprises is considered to be dangerous based on past events is that the once an authoritarian leader is kicked out and removed from power, in the case of Gaddafi, killed, in the case of Saddam Hussein, arrested and executed, then there's been a report about what goes there instead, and what filled that factory in both Iraq and in Libya was effectively the collapse of those states. Iraq is trying to recover more than 20 years later. What's 15 years now later in Libya? Libya is a failed state with two different governments, with dozens of militias, with states basically running their cities rather, city-states running their own affairs, absolute confusion in the country, which has so much oil and a small population that they all have Western European standards of living, basically what we want. Consequences of that, and these things are not just internal, they then have knock-on effects in terms of refugee policies, in terms of seeding problems in the countries around them. It's not just we'll do this, go home, declare victory, and bingo, that's it. It's not like Venezuela. It's much more complicated than that, particularly in this new part of the world, in the Middle East, which is the most turbulent and stable place on the planet.
Indeed, Jeremy. I mean, that brings me on to my next question, which is, it was only at the start of this year that we saw that anti-government uprising in Iran, that brutal government cracked down on those protests. Is there any appetite? I know it's difficult to hear from people in Iran, but is there an appetite for an uprising now while this war is unfolding?
Well, one thing the Americans said was don't go too fast, because what prepared the ground to be able to take what is yours. Among people who hate the regime, and there must be so many of them, because it's been a catastrophically bad regime for the way that Iranians have had to live over many, many years. Very repressive, destroying their economy, highly corrupt, mismanagement, I mean, you name it, the charge sheet is very long, so it's absolutely clear that there are loads of Iranians who really want the regime to go, but how do they go? Because the thing is that the way that they have constructed themselves, the way they've engineered the regime, both politically and militarily, is to resist crises like this. It is not a one-man show. It's not like Assad Syria, when Bashar al-Assad was under attack in December of 24, and essentially fled overnight, just disappeared. People, they left all their stuff behind in their house. They just grabbed a few pairs of socks and left. And went to Moscow. His entire regime collapsed in a couple of hours. That is not going to happen in Iran because they built it in such a way that there's a dense network of political institutions which underpin it, which wield power, which are overlapping. But as well as that, they have very formidable security forces, as well as police who are can be very aggressive. Never mind just that, there's the Islamic Revolutionary Guard, or the IRGC, which was from the very outset wanted to protect the Islamic Republic at home and abroad. And they, I think the figure you often quoted is something like getting on for 200,000 regulars, 600,000 or so reservists, and behind them there's a volunteer paramilitary militia of the Basij, and their numbers are sometimes estimated at up to 1 million. They also have a reputation for great cleverly. I was in, been very hard to get visas, I haven't been through much, but quite a long time, but when we used to get visas more readily. In 2009, there was a disputed election, and there was a big, huge millions of people on the street after that, and that was crushing. And what we could see walking through Tehran, we weren't allowed to walk the streets because there was martial law, goodness knows what else going on. But so as to go for a long walk through the streets of Tehran, and you could see there were just along the main thoroughfares, there were grand avenues in Tehran, and there were these thick set men with rubber truncheons and clubs, these were Basij guys. Behind them, there were heavily armed ladies, as you see figures, with weaponry. There were these hit squads of motorcycles, like flying squads going around on motorcycles in Basij when demonstrations would break out here or there and then they were scattered. They have a really effective way of dealing with dissent, and the effective way is killing people who go onto the streets and dissent, and thousands were killed, possibly several tens of thousands, we don't really know, in January. And these guys who I've been describing are the people who did it. And as far as we know, they are very much still there. There have been pro-regime demonstrations in Iran, which have filled up big squares of people. There are regime loyalists. It's wrong to think that everybody in Iran is against the regime. A lot of people are, but there are others who are not. And while they still retain the loyalty of those people, particularly the men with guns, from the inside, it's going to be very difficult to shake them.
Indeed, it's great to have an extended chat with you, Jeremy. I'm sure you'll be back with us in the days to come. But for the moment, really do appreciate you taking the time to answer some of our viewers' questions here on Recent News Channel. That's our intellectual editor, Jeremy. Well, as we've been hearing, thousands of people are stranded across the Gulf region. It includes British citizens, Rajan and Jyoti Shah, who are currently in Muscat. They're on their way back from Sri Lanka, but they are now in limbo. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to us. Just tell us a little bit more about what help you've been getting, what people have been saying to you, because of course we don't know when flights necessarily going to fully resume.
We've had little information. Obviously, we know these places are closed. Until now, we haven't even had our luggage. We just had a notification today about being able to go and collect the luggage from some convention centre. But as things stand now, we are safe, which is the main thing for us. But not knowing when or how to try to get home.
I'm sure that has been affected. Have you seen or heard anything that's the move in Iran?
The mood here, I think people are glad to be here, which does seem to be a relatively safe state in the region compared to other states that have been attacked. I think the people seem to be frustrated about what Iran are doing to their neighbours. And we've had differing opinions about when this might end. It might be a bit soon, and it will go on for a long time.
And you've got other family members who are also stranded due to flight disruptions as well.
Correct. So my nephew, his wife, were in Dubai, and they're stuck in Dubai.
They were due to fly back today. I think they've now extended their stay.
Okay. Rajan and Jyoti, thank you very much for updating us on the situation that you were in, and we do hope you get more support and help while you remain in limbo. Of course, it's unclear when exactly all of those flights will resume. Of course, attacks are continuing. The Iranian army says it's launched attacks on Israel and on a US base in Qatar, which is in the last few moments. I'm Regina Guidanova. I'll be back after the break with the very latest on the
to discover the origins of legends to that Native Africa. Then if you want, we want to honor the crusaders of the night, when they had fighting together. We want to thank those who care about justice and fight darkness from the shadows. Where do you find DC legends from Gotham to Tinashe in March on TNT? You want football that's absolutely unlimited. Football with no respect for ranking, league, or history. If you want the win, it's Norway. Starting this journey, it's on the Sports. Proudly brought to you by Sporting Bets. Betting.
Convention season. This is an offer to give the students the experience of the condition and the information that's not condition. So my center school fees is great. So time to send to the school. So we go try talking to me and students to the school.
Live from London, this is BBC News. The conflict in the Middle East intensifies. Israel continues France and Beirut, says it's sending ground troops to Lebanon. America and Israel say they've destroyed Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard's command center. Iran continues to retaliate through drones at the US Embassy in Saudi Arabia. Investigating Bahrain United Arab Emirates and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio has warned the US will
The next phase will be even more pressure right now.
Germany and France join Greece to send military support. It's found in the Gulf as limited flights presumably via Abu Dhabi, tens of thousands of passengers are still unable to leave as much of the airspace remains closed. The US-Israel war against Iran has entered its fourth day. Israel says it's launching simultaneous strikes on Lebanon's capital Beirut and the Iranian capital Tehran. Police images show the aftermath of those strikes in Beirut. Israel says it's been successful after all the south of the country. Tehran forces backed by Iran says it's targeted 3 Israeli bases in response. Iran's been striking down across the region, while the US State Department says American citizens should leave the Middle East. Those that you can see live in Beirut at the moment, you can see there smoke hanging in the air, just hearing that at least 30,000 people are already displaced in Lebanon by the Middle East war. That's coming just out from the United Nations. Well, Israel's defense minister has told troops to take control of the positions in Lebanon. Israel, Qatar, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia and Kuwait have also warned Iranian missiles and drones entering their airspace in recent hours. Well, the Iranian Red Crescent says more than 780 people have
Yeah,
been killed
that's
so
so much.
far. The United States says service members are now known to. Well, let's take a look at the picture in Lebanon. I'm speaking to our correspondent Lena Sinjar, who's in Beirut.
Well, continuing the strikes and targeting in the southern and in the south as well. And a lot, like myself, is not even stopping. They've resumed attacks and more strongly in the areas reporting on various celebrations for Israel, despite calls from the government to halt any military or security activities by the country at large, is blaming Hezbollah for dragging the country into war. Some people even call them a treason because they have acted in the interest of Iran and caused the killing of Lebanese, the displacement of thousands of Lebanese, those who lost their homes in the 2024 war with Israel as well, are now yet again having to flee their homes because of a single sided decision taken by Hezbollah to act in accordance to what Iran wants. That's how why the people are viewing the situation. And for the first time, I have to say, voices of loyalists to Hezbollah, those from the Hezbollah groups and community, they feel that this was a wrong decision. They feel that this was a sort of a suicide attempt for Hezbollah by taking this decision and dragging the whole country into war. The government, on its side, is trying to de-escalate, trying to send messages of, political solution, isolate Hezbollah in military and for security, but it's going to take a while for this to de-escalate and hope that the government, the country will not be dragged into a war.
Well, of course, that's a fast developing situation. Just to bring you
Not
some more
supposed to
updates
put
that
that
we
this
are
people
getting into
do.
us from the Middle East. And we are hearing from Bahrain, the interior ministry there, the sirens now sounded there. We are also hearing from the United Arab Emirates that authorities are doing an advanced fire in the port of Fujairah. That's from the government there as well. And as we were telling you a short while ago, at least 30,000 people are now displaced in Lebanon following the war in the Middle East. That's coming into us from the United Nations as well. Well, US Vice President J.D. Vance has been talking about the war. He said President Trump wanted Iran to make a significant long-term commitment never to build a nuclear weapon, but that commitment wasn't forthcoming. Let's have a listen.
After months, really almost a year of painstaking diplomacy, what the president determined is he didn't want to just keep the keep the country safe from an Iranian nuclear weapon. And for the first 3-4 years of his second term, he wanted to make sure that Iran could never have a nuclear weapon, and that required fundamentally a change in mindset to the Iranian regime. So he saw that the Iranian regime was weakened, he knew that they were committed to getting on that brink of a nuclear weapon, and he decided to take action because he felt that was necessary in order to protect the nation's security.
Senator Rubio, Secretary Rubio, and the President have both said something along the lines of, you ain't seen
So
nothing
from
yet.
tomorrow,
We can
put
get
like 3K,
security talks with
2K.
What does that mean?
You hear me?
Well, what it means is it's all
I hear me.
Capacity here. I think there's a lot of chatter of what our objectives is, what our goal is. I mean, the president's extremely clear about our objectives.
Hello?
And it's that
So
Iran
from
not have a nuclear weapon, but there's also been a lot of conversation about what are our capabilities. And
you
look, I know this stuff, obviously, I'm not gonna go classified information here.
No,
On
you
air,
meet
but
up
the
there,
President of the United States
so
knows
from
what we're able
tomorrow,
to
put
do.
like
He
3K.
knows that we have much greater capacity to inflict damage on the Iranian nuclear program, but also on various missiles that threaten our troops. As you've seen, they've been launching those at our
I didn't even know you
troops for
started
much of the past 3 days. So I think the president has made very clear that the United States has a lot of optionality here. And, we can go for a little bit longer, we can go for a lot longer.
Well, that's
Made
fine,
clear to
that's
the
why I
Iranians
said
and the world
it's
that he is not gonna
no
rest
problem.
until he
That's
accomplishes that
what I
all-important
said
objective of ensuring The
Yeah,
Iran can't
quite
have a
some
nuclear weapon, not
odds,
just for the next few years, not just because we obliterated Fordo or some other enrichment facility, but because the Iranians themselves commit long-term to not building a nuclear weapon.
What's your Vice President JC France there? Well, let's hear now from our correspondent David.
J.D. Vance, you mentioned there, making the point on Fox News that Donald Trump would be better than to embroil the United States in the sort of conflict we saw in Iraq and Afghanistan. But Mr. Trump has also been warning about what he calls a big wave of American strikes on Iran, which is he made it appear. And Mr. Trump saying that basically the US attempts to destroy Iran's ballistic and nuclear weapons programs and obliterate its navy, and as he put it, just started. And we heard similar sentiments expressed by the US Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who said that the next state
you also realize
as
that
he was the United States is
what
about to increase
I'll
its
send you
attacks
that
on
distance.
Iran. Iran is increasing its attacks on US allies in the region. Saudi Arabia, the latest victim of Iranian drone attacks, 8 of which were shot down. 2, though, managed to strike the US embassy in the Saudi capital, Riyadh, setting it briefly on fire. No injuries there, but the US State Department, nonetheless, urged US citizens in basically the Middle East, 14 countries, to leave as soon as possible. Social media post read that it put here court capitals department now due to serious security risks. We heard as well Donald Trump today, sentiment echoed by his defense secretary Pete Hegseth, that they're not ruling out the possibility of boots on the ground. Now that, were to come to it, would of course considerably increase the possibility of American casualties.
Speaking of casualties there, let's bring you up to date with the deaths so far in the war. The numbers we understand of people who've been killed. Well, first of all, we're hearing from Iran's British president that more than 780 people have been killed in the recent conflict so far. We're also hearing that at least 9 Israelis have been killed, and in Lebanon, at least 52 people, and of course, as we've been also reporting, 6 service personnel. There are unreported deaths across the region as well. We'll try and verify as many and bring the updated death toll to you, of course. Remind you of the cost of the war. Whereas Israel continues to its offensives on both Iran and Lebanon, our correspondent from Omsk.
It's actually been relatively quiet overnight, certainly here in Jerusalem. We're hearing sirens overnight. That's the first time that's happened since the war started. We did get sirens going on first thing this morning, and I think that was an Iranian drone attack, which probably has been dealt with by Israel. The really significant story is when Israel's defense minister expanding ground operation in southern Lebanon. Now, Israel has maintained troops in southern Lebanon since the ceasefire came last year between Hezbollah and Israel after a short war, but it's now said it's going to push forward further north and secure positions to launching attacks on northern Israel. Now, Hezbollah entered this war a couple of days ago, and I think one of the things Israel wants to avoid doesn't want the residents of northern Israel, who you remember had to evacuate their homes for well over a year once the war in Gaza started. They don't want that to happen again. That became very unpopular, it's damaging the economy, people left their jobs behind. So Israel has expanded its offensive, on that front.
John, an expanded offensive, as you say there, we just heard from Prime Minister Netanyahu, what you say, Vietnam, it seems like sensitive and sensitive ground troops into neighbouring Lebanon are going to expand.
Yeah, because it's never going to say it was going to be the small, because that would be very, very unpopular, especially
with the president. He states
This small money is adding. Is it adding it to that 42 million?
Which thing?
The small money.
You between transaction, okay. Tell me that how you run. And I know it's not just go back on your
right-wing critics in the United States who normally are supporters of President Trump. There's a very prominent media person, Patrick Carlson, big supporter of Trump, but he's basically saying, look, Israel is dictating to America what they're doing. It should be the other way around. He's saying that Prime Minister Netanyahu is the tail really that's wagging the American dog.
That's John Johnson in Jerusalem there. John was mentioning that interview with Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Fox News. Let's have a listen to some of it.
I said it could be quick and decisive. It may take some time. It's not going to take years. It's not going to
use Rwanda to check
but she said we all and I think together we'll achieve it.
That's just one source, Lebanese officer speaking to the AFP. Of course, it's not a surprise that Israel said it was planning to send ground troops across to Lebanon. Another update that we're seeing from the Israeli military, it says its air force has struck the Iranian regime's leadership on camp. The RDF issuing a statement on Telegram saying that numerous munitions were dropped on the presidential office and the Supreme National Security Council. But let's get back to it, because let's have a look at what Israel and the US are hoping to achieve from this. Let's hear from a former advisor to two Israeli prime ministers, who spoke to my colleague Sean.
It is impossible to understand is President Trump from 2 days, 2 weeks, that Trump is severe is taking more time than inside of that. That's when we make mathematicians problems, then the Iranians said we will strike Arab Gulf states like United Arab Emirates, Qatar, and the U.S. said we will protect them. Which brings us back to
is when the premier complex defender is no longer just
obviously on how
looking for Mississippi.
what happens is
Just for that, she says
She's on our way. She's on our way.
So this was outside the
Like I say, anyone that thinks it's a reminder, of course, that we do have a live coverage of TV's website, which is bringing us all of the regular updates that we're getting from across the Middle East. See it there, that's actually a special analysis piece from the BBC International editor Jeremy Birmingham a short while ago. It's really worth a read. It looks at some of the possible outcomes and draws comparisons from other conflicts, including, for example, the war in Yemen. Around the world, it's BBC.
No charges.
A European leader, Marshall reforms in 1989, initiated a period of rapid economic
It's a very turn down my business don't just start
Ireland's GDP is expected to grow up to 3 times faster than the Eurozone average.
we can smooth the drive alongside the coalition government.
And this is only the beginning. Poland, your place to grow.
Is it full?
Yes.
Are you
If you show right, it's
football and football futures discussions in previous months, more than 4% to over 81 dollars a barrel. In afternoon trade in Asia, offers 4% falling in the Middle East. Revolutionary Guard in Iran report that a single drop of oil was allowed to leave the region as they step up their blockade on the Strait of Hormuz. Well, General Sardar Jabari said any ship that tries to pass through will set on fire. While ships are backing up on either side of that key waterway, which connects the oil and gas fields of the Middle East to the rest of the world. Meanwhile, the largest oil refinery in Saudi Arabia is getting a growing attack and its operations. Qatar has shut down its liquefied natural gas production after it says it was targeted. Well, let's speak to my colleague in the studio, and Verity, who's been monitoring all of this for us. So, first of all, the fact that oil has gone up by a huge amount, actually, $10 per barrel. And just tell us about, obviously, the gas supplies as well as your concerns that the war continues to intensify.
Yeah, so taking the oil price first, there's quite a sharp jump. 181, it was down around about 70. But that is still quite a lot below where it was, say, for example, in 2022, after the initial Russian invasion of Ukraine. When you look at natural gas prices, though, that's the slightly alarming jump, where you've had a more than 30% increase today in the futures price, the price in the future of the natural gas. So it's up to 153 pence a therm. It was down way below that. So up by more than 30% just on the day, and it was up already yesterday. And a lot of that's to do with the Qatari decision to shut the Ras Laffan plant that we've been discussing as a result of the drone strike.
Yeah, and of course we've also been talking about the strike on Saudi Arabia's oil facility as well, Aramco, which is one of the largest ones.
And also, of course, you mentioned these Hormuz, who are threat to set any ship on fire that comes through from Iran. Now, obviously, that has to be it becomes impossible, too expensive to insure a ship. There's no point offering insurance when it's almost a dead certain something will go wrong. So therefore, the prohibitive cost of insurance is one of the reasons why ships aren't going there or are going there much less than they have. So that's one effect. We're also seeing a knock-on effect of all this on the equity markets, on the prices of shares. So, for example, the FTSE 100, which lists the prices of shares in the top 100 companies listed in the London stock market, that's down by 2.3%. We're seeing similar falls around the world. So the European stocks index also down quite sharply. So until
Dear man, good to see you. Good morning. Good morning. I thought the traffic was too much today. I don't know that they're doing campaign. I don't know. Come on. I don't know. This is too much. Come in. Most of my branch ATM.
Hey, you get that branch to that ATM. I see you get that branch to that.
Have you? Look, it's small. No.
Isn't just, I don't see in top way. When you say Thursday, you say so going
I thought they are still doing and everything. I don't know. But the staff are there and everything. So when did you say they're coming?
Thursday.
Okay. So to their house, are they? You meet at home? Office. Office. The house is there too.
My father said no, I must come to me. I checked all this, you know.
All this.
Yeah, I'm sure he was from
He said he
home.
was from home. He was from home.
But that place, somebody is still there.
The person is supposed to be there. I got a mail, somebody to take care of it. The guy doesn't come like that. They said he hasn't ordered something, just has to look at
Not even twice. Once in 2 weeks or he hardly comes. Oh wow. Welcome. Okay, then. Let me small. What of Emmanuel and the rest? Emmanuel is in 7 numbers. Yeah, 3 and yeah, 2.
movie.
People that serious from number 3.
Oh,
Yeah, who's good? Relation. Who's good? The second one you got. Oh, the second one. The second one. On the papa. I know the black one. The papa is like the black one. I can't remember. Now that third one I know. A master of
the house.
nice one, nice one. Do you speak with the website man?
Yes, I do. So we're supposed to bring it today.
Yeah, so that means coming.
Something.
That means coming.
I'm supposed to send something
Today, okay.
I just lost my voice.
So that's what you said there. Oh, you wanted to come here?
No. I told you I'm going to send all the things to me. So we're looking at the cost before. I was trying to put it down. And I was
I think the one is around there. The guy hung around till 2K and the 2 years from the one is started. That will begin again. Getting picture things together and all this.
Let me do that first. We know it's not going to partnerships, but I don't want that partnership. He was a pharmacist. He doesn't want to okay, when I run looking at the cost and the business everything okay, let's discuss. Almost 3 weeks now. Let's this right. We send the chat.
You send me
Let me see what happens in place. Understand? We're supposed to use it and share the cost of the rate. Since it's Spanish, I need to say I did 100%, I got 100% from this, I did this, I did that. Let's see last week, okay, let's see from the table, it's not around. Then can we sit now? Okay, for me to be again at time.
Thanks for
maybe one of the things that goes by this it was last week.
You have to have one business. Say I'm not being my baby. My baby. Yes, nobody. Ada fozi, ọbụla ka ọ dọsịrị. Ada ma fozi ndị kredi mmadụ na-abịa but ọ na mmadụ afọ anya too. Some of them, I'm not there for self. When we try to do appointments, I got me something. I'm not allowed that fun. So, but when you we didn't. But I'm doing my dad best. Not work before. That's what we can be first thing. The reason. I'm not going to do your chance. I'm going to because I'm going. Someone in the condition, I'm going to have an office. Someone so, No one in there. All for go, just like we be getting card and address to the base and and then your child has we always something that you can see on the that's what they did for this man. And madam, I didn't have an amount. You go on the shop. So you know, going, one man of the shop, big plenty there. One is big now. Or Cairo, in my Cairo, former lecturer, and Canada, found out when we see the China or person can use there some kind of maybe I can't mind it also. And everything. The man will try to join the look for Cairo. And during that mistake, that like, I'm afraid I make a one another solution. I recognize about this because some people kind of push, and I went now to make her of the last thing in July. The band was communicated and she's going to one of the person the one of the family children school and our system. I think by the make her one of the producer from the results. Okay, kind of a long match on the example. Girls are one, this sound a little bit. One mother, I mean, I guess you are not stuff. They call me like, it's in my own little thing. I don't know. Like 15 years ago, first time job, I'm young. You tell me, let's go. Okay. Do this as a boy. When you did Kyle, I'll start that there's a small girl that she might be fresh, and then she did that one, and sometimes when I became maybe in December time is change. My woman became never. Make move for Não fata, homem que cansa. You know. So, when he was except because only the kitchen people. Since I can't people wait for Ghana, what happen? So much wait for people. They need to stand. I'm not 2 years and 9 months. Yeah, amazing. Use it as on your business. Okay, just go yes, it's central business area. We just created the land. And they are under the local office. it's not like not being able to do this to this to it's not where you are doing it. So so when you that was what you talking to most of it was just going to